episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at Curaleaf, one of the nation's leading providers of adult use and medical marijuana products, with 93 local dispensaries, 22 cultivation sites, and 30 processing facilities, all serving up more than 350,000 registered patients and customers in 23 operating states. Learn more about all the good work done by everyone over at Curaleaf at their website, curaleaf.com, with Curaleaf spelled C-U-R-A-L-E-A-F. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, October 20th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 993 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We lead the week's news off out in Virginia, where over the weekend, the state's first medical marijuana dispensaries opened up. On Saturday morning, the Dharma Pharmaceuticals company started seeing patients by appointment at its dispensary in Bristol, Virginia. Virginia's limited medical cannabis program has space for 5 vertically integrated companies, which can dispense medical marijuana oils, lozenges, and vape cartridges. One of those 5 spots, however, is currently vacant after California-based MSO MedMen was forced to turn over its Virginia license this summer for failing to meet certain requirements. Marijuana Business Daily is projecting the entire state's program to realize around $10 million in sales in all for next year, which would make it one of the country's smaller medical cannabis programs. Missouri also joined in on the medical marijuana program launching this weekend, as also on Saturday, 2 dispensaries opened up right outside of St. Louis, becoming the first 2 shops in the state to do so after voters passed a medical cannabis ballot measure in 2018. Unlike Virginia's limited program, Missouri is taking a more liberal approach and has given out 192 licenses to dispensaries, most of which are expected to be up and running by the end of the year. With those kind of numbers, Marijuana Business Daily has the state projected to see around $500 million in sales by 2024, with around $25 million to be made just this year between now and December 31st. Our final top story in the day brings us out to my hometown of Portland, Maine, where city councilors just made the very smart decision to award operating licenses to every qualified adult use dispensary applicant rather than to just the 20 they originally planned to give out. The decision was made to issue more licenses than planned rather than to have to devise a system for weeding out the 14 extra applicants, all of whom are perfectly qualified to operate a dispensary. That means that our little metro area of around 100,000 or so people will soon have more dispensaries per capita than Denver, Colorado. Color me excited. I should probably point out that our friends and sponsors Atlantic Farms and All Kind are both among the ranks of those to receive adult use licenses. The Portland Press-Herald has more here if you need it. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Curaleaf, one of the nation's leading providers of adult use and medical marijuana products, with 93 local dispensaries, 22 cultivation sites, and 30 processing facilities, all serving up more than 350,000 registered patients and customers in 23 operating states. Curaleaf is proud to be an active supporter of the Veterans Cannabis Project, which works to expand medical marijuana access by military veteran patients. Curaleaf has partnered up with the Veterans Cannabis Project for a very cool promotion where customers and patients can purchase a specially branded Veterans Cannabis Project box of pre-rolls at select Curaleaf shops and have a portion of the sale go to helping the Veterans Cannabis Project further their work. You can learn more about that very cool cooperative effort at curaleaf.com and vetscp.org, where you can also dive into more on how you yourself can help. That's curaleaf.com, spelled C-U-R-A-L-E-A-F, and vetscp.org. Big thanks to everyone at Curaleaf for the support that helps us keep the podcast train rolling. All right, time for the Blitz. Kyle Yeager over Marijuana Moments picked up on news out of New York, where the Canopy Growth YouTube show just interviewed New York Assistant Counsel Axel Burnaby, who said that new legislation will be introduced to the state legislature in January to legalize adult use marijuana. There's been a lot of work in New York over the past few years to pass adult use legalization through state lawmakers, but various complicating factors have stymied efforts so far. A storyline we've covered well here on The Daily. I actually moderated a panel discussion just last year at the New York Bar Association with Assistant Counsel Burnaby. You can find that via a Google search for Springtime for Cannabis New York State. In his interview with Canopy, Assistant Counsel Burnaby also talked about proposed laws governing CBD edibles and drinks, so I'd pop over and give this one a read and view, especially if you do any kind of business in New York. WFSU Public Media has a very interesting story about a hemp distributor who is challenging the Drug Enforcement Administration's definition of marijuana via the use of Delta-8 THC, a close chemical cousin to the better-known Delta-9 THC, which is responsible for the bulk of marijuana's pleasant effects. The rub of this story has to do with the fact that the official definition of banned marijuana specifically calls out Delta-9 as the substance that is to be limited by law, not Delta-8 THC, which is said to provide feelings similar to Delta-9, though at about half the duration. This is a complicated story with lots of moving parts, so I would absolutely add this to your list of stories to read in full today. We're bound to see more of this for as long as the federal government insists on trying to keep cannabis illegal. This next story is in need of a bit of a disclosure as it concerns the California-based company Vertosa, whose CEO Ben Larson is one of the hosts and regulars of our weekly show Marijuana Today. Vertosa is getting some news in the industry for the partnership it has secured with Pabst Labs, the makers of the hipster-friendly beer Pabst Blue Ribbon. The new partnership will see the development of a special marijuana-infused seltzer to be sold under the brand Pabst Blue Ribbon Cannabis-Infused Seltzer. The Canadian province of Alberta is removing the limit it placed on the number of marijuana stores that any one person or entity can control. The rule change goes into effect on November 1st and lifts the cap of 15% of the province's total stores, or 79 out of 528 total. That cap was put in place to facilitate the entry into the market of smaller operators. Alberta government officials now are saying it's important to make it easier for the legal industry to compete with illicit operators, so expect increased consolidation province-wide. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has signed off on the regulation plans for industrial hemp submitted by Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and South Dakota, in addition to plans submitted by native tribes from the Comanche Nation, the San Carlos Apache Tribe of Arizona, and the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. These plans are required by the federal government and lay out how states and tribes plan to oversee industrial hemp, made legal by the 2018 Farm Bill. These latest approvals bring the total number of state and tribal plans signed off on to 69. Nice. Multi-state cannabis operator Acreage Holdings has repaid a high-interest loan that it took out this summer, with the additional news that the company used the money to secure a stake in the New Jersey medical marijuana market. You might remember news from this summer of Acreage borrowing $15 million at a 60% interest rate, which is just crazy in the world of corporate finance. The company ended up shelling out $3 million in interest for the loan, as yesterday Acreage announced the full repayment of $18 million. According to Marijuana Business Daily, Acreage used $10 million of that to buy a license in New Jersey from Compassionate Care Foundation. We end the day's news on a positive note with Tom Angel over Marijuana Moments reporting on a newly released poll from New Jersey showing that a full 2/3 of prospective voters support a ballot measure to legalize adult use cannabis, with just 23% opposed. That's on the heels of another poll released last week that found just about the same level of support. Tom's story on this is good for rounding out all the details, and he managed to scoop out some demographics for the poll released yesterday, so this is worthy of a dive over. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. As I just mentioned, I am expecting to actually be able to put a show together tomorrow. Regular listeners know that our publishing schedule has been pretty disrupted this month and last, just thanks to coronavirus restrictions. Yeah, and it's meant that we haven't been able to put a show together on Wednesdays, but I think I've figured out a solution. So we will have a show tomorrow. Thanks to our sponsor, Curaleaf, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.